Girl, you've got questions. Questions about your body and how to feel good in it, about your hormones and how to keep them in check. Questions about your sex life and your whole health. Can you imagine having a best girlfriend who was also a triple board certified OBGYN? A girlfriend doctor you could call and ask or tell her anything. Someone who could show you how to live any stage of life, before, during, or after menopause, in a big, bold, and beautiful way. Well, friends, I'm your girlfriend doctor. I believe you are meant to flourish and shine, to embrace life and awaken to all its possibilities. Let's get there together. Welcome to our show. This episode of the Girlfriend Doctor Show is all about reimagining what's possible for breast health. Where have we been led astray? What can we do to feel breast empowered, right? To put our best breast forward, first step, right? Best step forward. And this is so important because, one of the main things that is so confusing is about the, recent black box warning being removed saying on the estrogen labels saying that estrogen causes breast cancer. Well, today on my show, I'm really excited to have a colleague and a friend, Dr. Jenn Simmons, who is the go-to expert in this area. She is a former top breast surgeon turned integrative oncologist, best-selling author, podcast host, and founder of Real Health MD. And she is just honestly perfection reimagined here. She has her own story and has really been in the trenches. Thank you, Jenn, for coming on today.
It's my pleasure. I'm so happy to be here with you. Can I ask you like a totally vapid, shallow question first?
Absolutely.
So you wear your signature red and it's so beautiful on you. Did you like do your colors or did you just decide that red was your color?
Well, we have our mutual friend, JJ Virgin,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been masterminding with JJ for, almost like decades now. And one of the things she had me do early on was my colors. And
Okay,
so
you did
I
do
think it's
that.
called a warm spring or something like that. But I was like, I have to have red. And they're like, okay, well, we can fit red in, but it's a certain kind of red.
Yeah.
And so I may go wishy-washy on that, but I love your red. I love your red
Oh, thank
hair.
you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I've been a little bit, I'm very out in the open where you have to pick your poison. And my poison that I choose is hair color because I'm just not ready to look like my mother and be gray. And I'm getting closer. Like I'm now looking at women with that like gorgeous salt and pepper hair. And I'm thinking maybe soon, not so soon, but I'm getting there.
Well, I committed to the gray coming in 2 years ago. It's slow. It's a slow come in, but I've got about 6 inches of natural
Yeah,
growth. And
but
then
you're doing a beautiful job. You're wearing it really well. When I
thank you.
just saw you in person, I mean, it looks beautiful now, but I actually saw you in person about a month ago at the A4M conference, and you're looking stunning.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's really quite striking in person. You're wearing it beautifully.
Thank you. I love it. I do have an uncle that said, "Why are you letting your hair grow?" Right? Your gray hair grow. Why are you showing your gray hair? And I was like, "That's old school." I mean, like that's really. I'm like, that is just so old school. So, but yeah, no, I appreciate that. I love it. I love the silver. I love the sparkles, and I am embracing it. So, thank you so much. Thank you
You're
so much for
welcome.
noticing.
You're welcome.
Well, tell
All
us.
right, I totally sidetracked us.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no,
sorry. I
I
have to
love
get
it.
my girl stuff in there. We can
Yes.
talk about all the science now.
Okay, perfect. Well, I want you to share your story with our audience. Like, how did you go from breast surgeon to integrative
Yeah.
oncologist and, to hormone post breast cancer advocate?
Yeah. So, I actually come to the breast cancer space very organically. I come from a breast cancer family. I come from a big family. Every woman in my family had breast cancer with the exception of my mother and myself. And so I really don't remember a time where I didn't know about breast cancer. I mean, it was absolutely part of the fabric of my family. And growing up, I had a first cousin. Her name was Linda Creed. She was a singer-songwriter in the 1970s and 1980s. She wrote all the music for the Spinners and the Stylistics. She was beautiful, brilliant, larger than life, lit up a room when she walked in. She was my hero. She wrote 54 hits in all, but her most famous song was the iconic hit that Whitney Houston released to the world in March of 1986 called The Greatest Love of All.
Hmm.
And when Whitney recorded that song, it spent 14 weeks at the top of the charts. Only my cousin Linda would never know because she died of metastatic breast cancer 1 month after Whitney released the song. I was 16 years old and my hero died.
Mhm.
And her life and ultimately her death gave birth to my life's purpose because I never wanted another woman, another family, another community to have to suffer the way that mine suffered. And so I did the only thing I knew how to do. I became a doctor, the first doctor in my family. I became a surgeon. I became the first fellowship trained breast surgeon in Philadelphia, the first oncoplastic surgeon in Pennsylvania. And I did that really well and for a really long time. And I did it long enough for my aunt to be diagnosed and long enough for my mother. And at 46, it was my turn. And I went from probably being one of the most high performing individuals you've ever met to I couldn't walk across the room because I didn't have the breath in my body. And I had this really intensive 3-day workup. And at the end of 3 days, found myself sitting in the office with my friend and colleague and physician, and he tells me that I need surgery and chemo and radiation, and I'm going to be on lifelong medication. And despite the fact that these were things that I said all day, every day to other people without hesitation or reservation, when those words are coming at you, I assure you they have different meaning. And despite the fact that I knew that this was standard of care, I mean, I had thyroid. I didn't have breast, but I had thyroid, and I knew that this what he was telling me was what he understood to be the truth. And yet, I couldn't quiet the voice in my head that said there's something more, go find it. And I was a conventionally trained doctor running a conventional NIH accredited cancer program, running the surgery department. I mean, I could not have been more mainstream medicine. And yet I had this voice saying, there's something more, go find it. So I go on this journey, not for anyone else's benefit, but my own, to figure out how to heal myself. And in very short order, I find myself in a lecture hall, and this tall, lanky guy walks on stage, big toothy grin, and he introduces himself as a functional medicine physician. Now, at this point, I'm a doctor for 20 years. I'm still plenty cynical. And all I can think of is, there's no such thing as functional medicine. What is this quack talking about? But I remember that I'm sick and I'm there for a reason. So I check my big fat ego at the door and I tune in. And thank God I did. Because within minutes, not only do I realize why I got sick because I needed to be in that room on that day and listen to this man speak. Because not only was he going to telescope how I was going to heal myself, but he was also laying out how I was going to spend the rest of my life, the rest of my career, my purpose, my meaning, my raison d'etre, right? So turns out the quack is Mark Hyman, which in 2016, you can imagine a scenario where you would have no idea who he is, right? I mean, maybe you knew who he was because you evolved far before I did, but I had no idea who he was. And the fact that what he was saying was that in conventional medicine, especially in the area of cancer, we've kind of got it all wrong.
Yeah.
So all of our focus is on the tumor, but the tumor is not the problem. The tumor is the symptom of the problem. And once you realize that, you you really question how we're going about the management of cancer, because cutting it and burning it and drugging it, it's not working. And the reason it's not working is because that's not doing anything to affect the trajectory of that person's health. In fact, it's in it for the most part detracting from their health, right? No one got any healthier in the operating room, in the radiation suite, in the chemotherapy suite. Like, we're not making people healthier there.
No.
In fact, we're making them sicker. And so I'm an early adopter. I'm a quick start, right? And I got really, really excited. Enrolled that day in the Institute for Functional Medicine, spent the next 3 years just submerged in the study of functional medicine, and came out on the other side and knew that staying in surgery was never going to do what I set out to do, which is to forever change the conversation around breast cancer and the impact that breast cancer has. And so I left and started Real Health MD, which is a functional medicine oasis for women anywhere along their breast cancer journey. And from there, it just grew because, as you very well know, we have to maintain curiosity and we have to continue to ask questions. And as the information changes, so must our minds. We have to do things differently if we want a different outcome. If we want a different tomorrow, then we have to change what we're doing today.
It's a powerful story, and it like how your life trajectory changed and what's, you know, the perspective that you put on it. Because I've seen you on stage and it's so powerful. Your words are so powerful and your presence is even that much more powerful, and you radiate health. One of the things when I see clients, who have been diagnosed with any type of cancer, particularly breast cancer, I always ask them, what caused your cancer to begin with? Right? Like, I want to know what caused your cancer to begin with. And oftentimes they'll tell me, I don't know. I said, what did your oncologist say? Nothing. I'm like, what additional workup did they do? None. And it's so important to understand from functional medicine perspective, we look, okay, what were your epigenetic risk factors? What is in your environment? What in the external environment, internal environment that could have potentially caused your cancer to also feel empowered? Because we know the number one risk of breast cancer is a prior history of breast cancer. So we want that empowerment piece. We want to let that be just a part of the past. Like, hey, I graduated high school, finished college, whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
finished breast cancer. That's done. And you've done that in such an elegant way. Like,
But
how
you
did you
have to
shift?
remember that's a personal goal, but that is not the system's goal.
Yeah.
So the system is designed in like 5 year chunks, right? Like, I only want to really get you through the next 5 years so I can check that box, but then I want you back again. It's really designed for to generate customers. That's what it is. So I know that sounds horribly cynical and I wish it wasn't true, but that is what the system is designed for. And all through my training, never, ever, ever, I have 5 years of surgery. I have a year of fellowship. I was trained by the top people in the world in the area of breast cancer. Never were we talked to about root cause. Never. We were always told to tell people that breast cancer is multifactorial. There's nothing you could have done, right? Completely take control away from the patient. And there's nothing that you can do personally other than have this surgery, have this radiation, take this medication. That's all that you can do to prevent a recurrence, right? It robs everyone of their power. Now, some people are grateful for that because They don't want the responsibility of having to ask the why. They're not ready to confront that. They don't want to go down the blame or shame game. And I don't think anyone should. This is not about blame or shame, but it is about health optimization. And that is the piece that is missing entirely in the area of conventional medicine. It is just totally absent. We are never talking about health optimization. And everyone that gets a breast cancer diagnosis gets a treatment plan.
Mhm.
But virtually no one gets a health plan. It doesn't exist. So, the first thing that I do when I work with people, even before they get to see me, they're going through what I call the breast burden score with my team. And they are going through all of those things that actually we know do cause breast cancer, right? They may not cause them singularly, and they may not cause them fast enough for people to make the connection and actually recognize the relationship, but for sure they contribute to a breast cancer diagnosis. So we ask them, what does your diet look like? Is it made up of a lot of processed foods? Is it a high sugar, high glycemic diet? Do you do any fasting, or are you a grazer? What kind of water are you drinking, and what have you been exposed to in your water and your food? We talk about things like, are you sedentary? Are you an over exerciser? Because that can contribute. How much stress are you managing? How much time do you spend on a cell phone? How many EMFs are you exposed to? What's happening in your mouth? Do you have dental amalgams? Do you have root canals? Do we have a reason to believe that your mouth is a source of chronic inflammation? And speaking of chronic inflammation, what kind of virus burden do you have? What kind of fungal burden do you have? What kind of parasite burden do you have? And we're asking all of these questions. What's your sleep like? Are you a short sleeper? Do you have chronic sleep deprivation? Are you on doing shift work? Did you ever do shift work? What kinds of exposures have you had? Do you have childhood trauma? How much alcohol do you drink? Do you smoke? Do you have secondhand smoke exposure? And, we're taking all of these things into account and painting a picture until we get to the point where the person says, oh, yeah, that's me, right? And we tell them their story so that they understand it, not for the purposes of saying, like, oh my God, I caused my breast cancer, but for the purposes of saying, oh my God, here's my action items. This is, if I want to move on, if I want to put that diagnosis behind me, like what you described, right? I graduated from that. If you want to graduate, then you have to figure out your why, and you have to remediate it, and you have to leave that in the past. That has to be the old you. And
Mhm.
I'm telling you, like, you can look at pictures of me from before I was diagnosed, and not immediately after, obviously, because it took me literally 3 years to heal, and I got a lot sicker before I got better. But I am a different person, and entirely everything about me is different than what it was before. And what I did to get well is not going to apply to everyone. I had a terrible mold burden. I was a sugar addict. I was drinking probably 6 cocktails on the weekends. Like, I was a different person then than I am
Mhm.
now. And everyone does what they have to do. I had 6 metal amalgams in my mouth. Everyone does what they have to do.
How do you feel now compared to how you felt before you were diagnosed?
Well, so what's amazing is, for so long, I completely compensated. So I wouldn't say that I I was tired before or anything along those lines. Or if I was, I thought, well, this is the life of a surgeon and a mother and a wife and an athlete. And, like I was running, burning my candle at both ends. But when I crashed, I crashed. I mean, I immediately gained 15 pounds. I was not recognizable. Um, I was in a myxedema state. So I don't know if most people know what that means, but like I was literally swollen and holding on to fluid, and I had voice changes, and it was when I crashed, I crashed.
Crashed hard.
I was
And
I was in a very bad state.
yeah, and it's important like what you're saying because so many people and this I hear this from all our high achievers like you're just running you are
Yeah.
powering through and
Yeah.
your body's giving you signs and symptoms but like yeah, I'm ignoring it. I know why that is, right? And I often hear too like I didn't realize how bad I was feeling till I started feeling good again. Right? Like when you put them through the detox, when you decrease the inflammation, when you improve their cellular function. Like I didn't realize how bad I was feeling until I started feeling good again. And we
Yeah.
just live with it. We live with it um I don't think there's a person out there who doesn't need a good detox and cleanse on a regular basis. I mean, it has to be a way of life.
I agree with you. I think between fasting, like intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, I think water fasts, prolonged water fasts, these have been game changers and needle movers for me. But I've had like menopause was so bad for me. So bad for me. And when I went through menopause, it was when I was kind of recovering from being sick, but not yet completely enlightened about hormones. So when I was going through menopause, I still believed that, because I came out of training in 2003.
Mm.
So when
After the
my,
WHI.
yes. So the person that trained me, um, which what his name was Gordon Schwartz, and he was one of the first, like he really was the thought leader in the area of breast surgery and being a dedicated breast surgeon. He was one of the, renegade OG people in that space. And he was Harvard trained and ran this international think tank. And so in 2003, he taught me three things. He taught me hormones cause breast cancer. And the only people that should take hormones are the people that absolutely positively cannot live without it. And said people who you put on hormones should take the smallest amount for the least amount of time, right? And this is the dogma that I lived with for 20 years and believed, because we believe a lot of dogma.
And suffered through yourself the consequences of.
Horrible. Horrible.
So
I
what was
mean,
the turning point for you? When did you say, okay, wait, I don't think these are all bad?
so it was actually I was doing one of my summits. Maybe it was even my first breast cancer summit. And I had a mutual friend of ours, Deb Matthew, on. And Deb Deb wanted to come on because she had transitioned from a, a pediatrician to doing hormone replacement. And she wanted to come on and talk about hormones. And I said, I'm really uncomfortable with this topic. We're talking to a breast cancer population. And she said, exactly. This is exactly who needs to hear this. And I said, well, what about the Women's Health Initiative? And she said, well, that was entirely false. And so I literally sat through her talk. She gave like a 40-minute talk debunking the Women's Health Initiative. And I sat through her entire talk with like my jaw on the ground, just dumbfounded. And after her talk, once we're off air, I was like, Deb, can I go on hormones? Because I understand what you're saying, that it's okay for everyone else, but I'm from this breast cancer family, and literally everyone in my family dies of breast cancer. And my aunt, who had thyroid cancer 5 years later, had breast cancer. And I'm really afraid because I look just like her, and everything in my life has been just like my Aunt Michelle. And she said, there is no reason that you can't take hormones. If you're taking bioidentical hormones, obviously you're not going to take synthetic progesterone, no progestins. But if you're taking bioidentical hormones and you're well monitored, there's absolutely no reason why you can't. And that was actually the turning point of me, my life, my career, my research, literally everything. Because if that wasn't true, and that was like such dogma. I mean, we had a black box warning,
Right.
based on those false results, right? So if that dogma wasn't true, what else wasn't true? And I started to go down these deep dives. And first of all, I got on hormones so that my brain could work again, because literally I would walk into the room and be like, the hell did I come in here for? And then I would leave and remember, and I would come back and forget and leave and remember. I mean, it was crazy. I literally had every single symptom of menopause you can imagine, from my head to my toes, every single symptom, every single one, which was not made better by the fact that we had mold in our house, remediated it, and then mold again. So that makes menopause like on steroids.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Inflammation and
Yeah,
toxicity and
so
hormone
bad.
disruption, all of those
So
things.
bad.
Well, and one of the rabbit holes you went down was on screening, the mammography
Yeah.
guidelines, mammography myths. And I think that's really important to talk about
Yeah.
because uh, yeah, we've been,
Talk about dogma,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So I'm sure you were taught the same thing in medical school that I was taught, which is that mammograms save lives, right?
right. Yep. That's what we
Do,
were taught
are
until you look at the research. Yeah.
did did you ever ask for the research? Because I know I didn't.
I started getting into the research and it was probably a good 10 years into practice. And I started, because I was down this functional medicine rabbit hole and listening. And I have a lot of international clients and family. And so understanding the European guidelines, why they were different. And so it
Yeah.
took a while. It took a while. And I was enlightened by Marcel Pick, women's health nurse practitioner. And she said in a personal history of breast cancer, and she laid it out for me and was powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, the same way I didn't question the hormone information, I also didn't question the mammogram information, right? We were told that mammograms save lives. Why would they lie to us? And so even when I was doing functional medicine, I was still asking people to get mammograms. And then went down the rabbit hole and looked at the research and learned that there has never ever been a study that showed that mammograms increase survival. Never. It doesn't exist. The study doesn't exist. And our entire worldwide mammographic screening program is based on the UK study that was done in the 1960s, where it was an invitation to screen study. So already tremendous bias, because it's who they invite to screen. Who are they going to invite to screen? The people that care about their health, right? Because the other people aren't in the system to be invited.
Right.
And it's who accepts that invitation to screen. So who's going to accept the invitation to screen? The person that's concerned about their health, right? Because the person that's not is not taking the invitation. So biased from the beginning, but ignoring all of that, they're comparing this invited population to the general population. They're screening 1,000 women over 10 years. And what do they find at the end of 10 years? They find that if you screen with mammogram, 4 women out of 1,000 will die of breast cancer. And if you don't screen with mammogram, 5 out of 1,000 will die of breast cancer. 4 is 20% less than 5. So mammogram prevents death from breast cancer by 20%.
Yeah, it's so skewed.
And everyone opened their doors based on that one study and that data. What they didn't talk about, which they should have talked about, is that there was no survival advantage in that the same exact number of women died of cancer in both groups. It's just that 5 died of breast cancer in this group and 4 died of breast cancer in this group, but the number that died of cancer is exactly the same. And what they didn't talk about is in the group that screened, 100 of them were called back for additional views, biopsies, unnecessary procedures, and the overdiagnosis that happens in that group, because you're going to diagnose anywhere from 20 to 30% more breast cancers if you use mammogram to screen. And the cost of overdiagnosis is significant because these women would have never known that they had breast cancer in their life, and they would have died with breast cancer rather than of breast cancer. But instead, we give them a diagnosis, we treat them, and we cause a whole heck of a lot of other problems along the way. We accelerate brain disease, we accelerate bone disease, we accelerate heart disease, we accelerate dementia, depression, anxiety. I mean, you name it. And this is the result of breast cancer treatment, which I'm not saying we shouldn't treat breast cancer. I just think that we should be a whole heck of a lot more selective about who does and doesn't get a diagnosis and who does and doesn't get treated. And those results, the overdiagnosis and overtreatment results, have been duplicated with huge studies over and over again. The Swedish study, 600,000 women, and Sweden has universal health care. So everyone has the same access to care. Everyone has the same kind of care. And they screen one group with mammogram and the other group just does, they either get physical examination or they see their doctor every year or whatever it is that they do. They're just not screening with mammogram. And the exact same number of women die of breast cancer in both groups. And the only difference between them is that if you screen with mammogram, you diagnose 20 to 30% more cancers. So no survival benefit. And all we're doing is more diagnosis, which is great for the system, but terrible for the women in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about the radiation exposure?
Yeah,
When we think of the radiation exposure, because early on in my practice, I had a client who came to my clinic and she'd had Hodgkin's lymphoma and then diagnosed with breast cancer. And then looking at those statistics, if you have a Hodgkin's lymphoma, like there's a huge increase. I want to say 70, but I have to look up the statistics again. But a huge increase in
70 to 80%.
And it's because of the radiation in treatment of the Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I was like, well, then if we're radiating every time we do a mammogram, how can that be good?
Yeah, right? It's so logical. And yet they're like screaming at us.
If you don't
no, it's not true. And, all I can think of is, me think thou dost protest too much, right? In every other scenario, when you ask a radiologist, does radiation cause cancer? The answer is a resounding yes.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's why they use protection. Right.
Known carcinogen.
Right?
If you ask the same radiologist if mammograms cause cancer, their resounding answer is no. Right? So suddenly, the radiation is no longer radiation. It's no longer harmful. How they reconcile it in their heads, but however it is, they do. I think they gave it a nice name, mammogram, picture of the breast, and everyone is just like pretending that it's not what it is.
Yeah, yeah. And
And
it's so important as a clinician because, like, the boards come after us. I mean, I've been in boards, insurance companies,
yep,
all that
all
stuff
of
will
it.
come after us. And so in working with, and like, you can't, like, there is that we want breast imaging in a safe way and in a safe frequency. And what's the best way? Because there's sono, MRI, thermogram,
Yep,
and you're an advocate of QT
yep,
breast imaging. And so,
yep.
want to talk about these because I have a lovely friend who is in her 60s, and she has a strong family history of breast cancer. And she had her yearly mammogram, and this time they see something. They did a diagnostic and said, we want to do a fine needle aspiration biopsy. And so she calls me. She says, okay, this is what they want to do. This is what's happening. And she goes, can a fine needle aspiration biopsy actually track the cancer? And I said, well, first of all, hold on a second. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What else is going on in your life? Were there, is anything, we'll go through the list, but have you done an ultrasound, and do you have access to QT imaging? So, and I think the MRI was inconclusive or something like that. So it was like,
Well,
okay,
that's
wait, I
almost
need more
diagnosis,
information.
diagnostic of it being benign because
Yeah.
MR is overread, overread, overread. So if the MR was inconclusive, she's probably fine. But, you know, I think that there was a time where it was hard to be critical of mammogram because it was all we had.
Right.
But that is no longer true. It's not even close to true anymore. And so, what I tell people to do in terms of screening, because when we're talking about the screening population, we are talking about healthy women who are asymptomatic, who we really have no reason to believe that they have the disease, right? That's what screening is. So, for those women, it is absolutely unethical to put them in harm's way. It is unethical to expose them to radiation, which is what mammograms do. I even think it's unethical to expose them to gadolinium, which is what is required in order for an MRI to be
Yeah.
useful, because the non contrast MRIs are not useful in terms of breast
And
diagnostics.
gadolinium, we don't know how to get it out of your body.
We don't. That's exactly right. I mean, I'm sure you see it. I see people who haven't had an MRI in years and they're still spilling it in their urine. So it is being stored in the body. Anything that's stored in the body is stored at the expense of something else and is causing tissue damage. We know this. We know this. So, what I tell people to do for screening, I'm never going to suggest something that isn't 100% safe. First, I think that everyone should be examining their breasts.
Yes.
Every woman thinks their breasts are lumpy. Just own your lumps, right? Know what you feel like when you're normal so that you know that you can recognize a change. So, self breast examination.
I
I
agree. And
know,
I always tell that clients because they're like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I'm like, your fingers have memory.
yeah,
If you feel like, okay, well, maybe something's different, that's enough to warrant
that's
investigation.
exactly right. And please know that, you may not know what you're feeling. I don't know that you need to know what you're feeling, but for sure, your practitioner who you see once a year is not going to know your breast better than you know yourself. It's impossible. So just learn to feel your breasts and know what they feel like when they're normal so that you can recognize when there's been a change. The second thing I advocate for is something called the ARIA test, the tears test, where we are taking a sample. I shouldn't say
I've
we,
heard you talk about this. I'm
not
like, okay, I've
me.
got to get this done.
Yeah, you do have to get this done. So I have my kit here that I did. So the box is a little crumpled. Um, but it's a tiny litmus paper that you put in your eye, send it off to the company. You close your eye for 5 minutes, send it off to the company. It's not painful. If you use eye drops,
Sounds
you can
painful.
do it. If
Okay.
you it goes right inside of your lid like this. Nothing. If you use eye drops, you can do it. If you have dry eyes, you can do it. Like there's nothing that precludes you from being able to do this test unless you live in the state of New York, which is a whole other thing. But outside of New York, there's nothing that precludes you from being able to do this test. It's a 5-minute test. Send it off to the company. And a week and a half later, you get a result as to whether or not your test is negative, in which case you're done screening. If you have a normal physical examination and a normal ARIA test, you're done screening. Or a clinically significant result. Now, a clinically significant result doesn't mean that you have breast cancer. It means that you have the inflammatory proteins, which are the precursors of breast cancer. So let's call it breast specific inflammation, right? And what you have is opportunity. Now, do you need imaging? Yes, you absolutely need imaging to see if there's something there. But if your imaging is normal, which it often is, what you have is opportunity. You have the opportunity to prevent a diagnosis. And what a blessing is that, right? So, thinking about all those things we talked about in the beginning, all those sources of inflammation and mediating them. So, I tell people, read my book, The Smart Woman's Guide to Breast Cancer. And it in here has all the list of the things that you're looking for that contribute to a breast cancer diagnosis. And you have the opportunity to prevent one. So what I tell people to do is do the ARIA test every year. But if you are a high risk person, if you are someone with a BRCA mutation, you come from you have a strong family history, you come from a family that has a lot of breast cancer, or you've had like an abnormal biopsy in the past, if you have some reason to believe that you're high risk, you can do this test every 6 months. And if it is negative, you just do it every year. If it is positive, then you have imaging. I suggest doing safe imaging. So I advocate for QT, which uses sound waves transmitted through a water bath to create a true 3D image of the breast. So without pain, without compression, without radiation, 100% safe. Or you can get an ultrasound, but I don't use mammogram for screening ever. Because again, I don't believe in putting healthy women in harm's way.
Now, I love that you're saying this because I think of, my board certifications are, Academy of OBGYNs and all of these, like the guidelines, they're so strict and stringent. I worry that if I say, okay, in 3 to 5 years, do a thermogram periodically in between. Ultrasound's another good option. Breast self-exam is mandatory. And like these alternating imaging with decreased frequency, I also worry about my medical license. So it's that type of, but I hear what you're saying is like radiation, that's risky.
I mean,
And
I do think that things are changing, maybe not fast enough,
yeah.
but women do have a choice. I think where the ARIA test has come in for me in terms of being the most important is there are so many women that want to go on hormone replacement and their doctor won't allow them to do it unless they have a mammogram. The ARIA test has a 93% sensitivity for breast cancer. 93%.
Yeah, that's huge.
Way better than the mammogram.
Yeah.
So you can comfortably prescribe for your patient if they have a negative ARIA test. And if they don't have a negative ARIA test, maybe that's the person that you need to work with them a little bit. They need a workup. You need to help them get to their root cause of their inflammation and work on that. And you can repeat the ARIA every 6 months. And I have people who have a positive ARIA come into my prevention program, and 6 months later, their ARIA is normal.
What about people with a history of breast cancer? Can you still do the ARIA testing, and how do you manage that?
It's not validated for them. And I know that the company, that is the next phase of their testing, is getting these samples from women with a history of breast cancer. So getting a sample at their baseline and then following them out over time to see what happens with these proteins and whether or not they go down. And then if they're ever re-diagnosed, collecting samples from them and seeing what happens with these proteins over time. So right now it's just for primary, but I do believe that it's going to play a significant role in detecting recurrence.
Yeah, yeah, interesting, because that's powerful, and that's easy to do, and they can do it in the comfort of their own home.
That's exactly right. And it's inexpensive.
Yeah, and we talk about QT imaging. Well, that's in a few states right now. Hopefully, eventually to be insurance, um, whatever covered.
Yeah,
But
yeah. It I mean, I truly believe that QT is forever changing how we screen for breast cancer because again, we shouldn't be using a test that
radiation.
causes breast cancer to screen for breast cancer. We shouldn't be using a test that requires gadolinium or any heavy metal or any toxic contrast agent. So I believe that QT is going to forever change how we screen for breast cancer. Right now, it is only available in a couple of states. However, I am changing that and I am changing that rapidly. So I am committed to putting up 50 in the next 5 years.
Nice.
And I'm going to have affiliate partners, women like yourself, who want to offer that service within their practice.
Mhm.
And I hope to put up an additional 50 along with affiliate partners. So right now, insurance companies don't need to talk to me, but
Yeah.
believe you me, when I have 100 centers, they're going to be they're going to be chomping at the bit for a conversation with me.
Well, I look forward to it because I definitely want to have that conversation with you and get one here in Dallas for my patients.
Yes.
And also, let's talk about now the client with a history of breast cancer and using hormonal therapy. I mean, I have a client that I see virtually. She's in North Carolina right now. She had endometrial cancer, not in stage 1, and not breast cancer. And they're like, nope, you can't be on any hormones. I'm like, where is that in the literature?
There, it doesn't exist. But they perceive a data void to be danger,
Yeah. Well, and
right?
then people with a history of endometrial cancer have a higher incidence of breast cancer.
They
So they're
do.
thinking down that path. But I'm like, well, this is where we need hormone balance.
But, and this is something that this is exactly what I'm discussing at A4M next month in December.
Excellent.
So, estrogen is like it's the shrapnel. It is the thing that's blamed, but it has nothing to do with anything other than it's an innocent bystander. So, what happens is when we have all of this inflammation, it actually influences the local environment and upregulates something that we call um, aromatase, which will then create more estrogen. But that's just the innocent bystander in the inflammatory process. And if you eliminate the inflammation, then you eliminate the increased estrogen and you eliminate the end result. So I think that we first of all need to make a huge distinction between have cancer and had cancer
Hmm.
because there's a big difference between have cancer and had cancer. I also think that we need to be paying the same attention, and I know that you do, but we need to be paying the same attention to those pillars of health and wellness as we are at prescribing hormones. And my worry is that, we've had a 20-year data void and we've had a 20-year period where the providers are not trained. They are hormone
And
illiterate.
I was
We have
surprised because I got
two
out
two
before. Yeah.
decades. Two
I
decades.
and I hear some physicians talk about that they, because they were in med school or residency during the 2002 release of WHI and they didn't get hormone training at all. And like
No.
that blows
But
my
why should
mind that
they? Right? It was a known
uh,
carcinogen. Why are they going to prescribe it? Right?
it's
And
yeah.
if they did prescribe it, what were they prescribing? Either birth control pills or Prempro. It's all they were trained on.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
they know. They don't know any different. So we have a big problem now because we have 2 decades of providers that are untrained. So we took that black box warning off, and it's great that we took the black box warning off. It never belonged there. But now what?
Right.
Because most people don't know what to do. So not only do they not know what to do, but they're also, most providers are not thinking about root cause medicine. They're not trained to make people healthy or well. So we're actually in a very dangerous, precarious position.
Yeah, and because this is so important, right? It takes more than hormones to fix our hormones,
That's
right? Like
exactly right.
100%,
Yes,
100%. And so they need to know. And I think you can't have hormonal health other than from an integrative health perspective.
you can't. You can't. They're the bow on top of the box, right? But the box is filled with all of the pillars of health that you and I know have to be firmly installed.
I
I
love
mean,
that analogy, the bow on top of the box.
yeah. I give nearly everyone your Keto-Green 16 book
Thank you.
because I tell them that you have to learn how to eat. You have to learn how to eat in a way that fuels your body. You have to drink clean water. You have to move your body. And especially if you're north of 50, you need to move your body in specific ways, in that you need to build muscle. You can't afford to lose your muscle because that is the key of your metabolism, right? And we all know you can't have hormonal health without having metabolic health, and vice versa. They're totally intertwined with one another. So you got to build your muscle. You have to sleep. Sleep is where the healing happens. So if you're not sleeping, you're not healing. And if you're not prioritizing sleep, you're not getting it. So if you're getting into bed at night and, this is your time to binge on Netflix till 2 in the morning, or play whatever game, I don't know, Wordle or whatever on your phone, like you're not going to heal. You're just not going to heal. And we have to minimize the amount of toxins that we expose ourselves to every day. So many of them act as xenoestrogens. They're acting like toxic estrogen in our body. They're sitting on that receptor and holding on to that receptor. They're causing genetic mutations. They're causing genetic defects. I mean, they are responsible for some of these hormonally mediated cancers. Believe me,
100%.
it's not your ovaries are not causing this. Your
No,
adrenal
no.
glands are not causing this.
And I want to just say, like, any anti-estrogen talk is misogynistic, right? It
It is.
absolutely is.
It is.
It's not the estrogen, right?
It's not
Thank
the
you. Thank
estrogen.
you for saying that. Thank you
Not
for
the
being such a
estrogen. It
positive
never
voice.
was the estrogen. It's really easy to blame the estrogen and to tell that estrogen story because it's like overly simplified. So people are somehow able to visualize it and believe it. But it's just reductionist, and
Well, and
it's simply not true.
exactly. And right, it's putting the blame on the innocent bystander. And I like
Yes.
how you say that. And the
Yep.
other important piece is the progesterone, because we know bioidentical progesterone and our body's production of progesterone is, increases the P52 enzyme, right? And supports autophagy. So
Yes.
it helps support our body's natural response to any breast
It's
cancer tumor cells.
it's actually cancer suppressive.
It's protective.
It's anti-proliferative.
Anti-proliferative.
It's our balancing hormone. If estrogen is the on button, progesterone is the off button. We need it. We absolutely need it. But, they're unlike the conventional medical system. We know on the integrative side of things, there is no one thing. There is no magic bullet, right?
That's right.
You're not going to take progesterone and not get breast cancer. I mean, maybe you will, but you have to do all the other things.
You have to do it all, right?
You have to do all the other things. And then hormones are absolutely, positively the bow on top of the box. I could not be here. I could not be functioning were it not for hormones. And I'll tell you that there is no there's no one person that is an absolute no for me. Even people with metastatic disease, I'm treating them with testosterone because it's anti-proliferative. Like there, there, there is a role for hormones in everyone, but
Yeah.
it's only one piece of the puzzle. And you have to give them
Yeah.
all the tools. But I think that everyone, as they, go through life and go through this period, I think that there is benefit for everyone, not just for the people that are symptomatic. And yes, it's lovely that it does manage menopausal symptoms, but as you and I know, it's doing so much more, right? And the things that, even if you think that you're asymptomatic, the things are happening. They're happening below the surface. You are developing heart disease. You are developing bone loss. You are having changes in your brain.
Hmm.
Whether you realize it or not, whether you feel it or not, it's happening. And it's just a fact that hormones help with these things. They are protective of your health in the long run. They do contribute to longevity. And I love Dr. David Rosensweet's line where we're not giving women hormones so that they can be fertile again, or that's not the reason. We're not trying to bring back their menstrual cycles. We're not trying to restore their youth. We're trying to keep women out of wheelchairs, nursing homes, and adult diapers. That's what we're trying to do.
That's right.
We're trying to get women so that they can live as long as possible, as well as possible, in a dignified manner.
Amen, right? Like just amen to that, right? Absolutely. And I think I mean, that's so important. It's quality of life issue, and not to discriminate against past diagnoses or age, addressing the underlying issues, resolving those issues, decreasing inflammation, right? That
Right.
is key. And I remember reading in 2017, the JAMA, or 2017 or 2016, the JAMA article that showed that even 12.5 hours between dinner and breakfast in women who had a history of breast cancer had, if they kept at least 12.5 hours, they had a significant reduced risk. So that, like, these are headlines that we
Yeah.
haven't had. And I love your book. If you can hold it up again for those that are watching this, if you're
Yep.
not,
The
come over to
Smart
our
Woman's
YouTube
Guide to
channel.
Breast Cancer.
Smart Woman's Guide to Breast Cancer. This is a must read. And you can hear from Jenn how she is, like, relatable, and she's sharing her story and her experience and all her research too. And it's powerful. I mean, it's really powerful. And you're not like, like coloring, out, this is like, you're not staying in between the lines here. Like, you are,
Yeah.
being bold and brave, and, and that's inspirational to
Maybe
me too.
crazy.
A bit crazy.
Maybe
And
a
I
little
love it,
crazy.
as I felt crazy for a long, long time. And yet, when it comes to like these recommendations to, I love how you're saying it and supporting it. And in this framework, you're
Well, I
also
mean, the
giving the woman
science
the
is
choice.
there. That's the
The
bottom
science is
line,
there.
is that the science is there. And the funny thing is, the science was never there for the other side of things.
No.
We were just lied to for so long that we believed it.
Yeah.
And this has unfortunately been occurring time and time and time again. I mean, I'm sure you don't want to get into the vaccine thing, but this story is unfolding before our eyes,
Yeah.
and there were a lot of people that believed a lot of things for a very long time. And I think it's going to be a really hard pill to swallow for the pediatricians and for the people that really, really believed in that, in that schedule.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of stuff is going to come to light.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And there's this great, what do I gotta give it to you real quick here. This great documentary that Del Bigtree did, that is on the understanding the research behind these vaccines. And what was it called here?
Someone just talked to me about this.
Oh my gosh, an inconvenient
An
study. So
inconvenient.
www.aninconvenientstudy.com. So this is by Del Bigtree, a great producer and getting into the science, the research, really like this, like with mammograms.
Yeah.
What did the research really say?
Yeah.
What did the research really say? And this is so important. So I want everyone to share this episode far and wide. So much important information here. And Jenn, how can people get in touch with you, work with you, and
Yeah.
get your book?
So many places. So I'm on all the social media channels at Dr. Jenn Simmons, and my Jen has two N's. My medical practice is called Real Health MD. So anyone anywhere along a breast cancer journey can reach out to me there and talk about working with us. My imaging centers are called Perfection Imaging, and perfection is spelled with a QT in the middle. And then I have a podcast called Keeping Abreast with Dr. Jenn, which Dr. Cabeca will be on in January with me. And my book, again, is called The Smart Woman's Guide to Breast Cancer. And yeah, I think that that's enough places for people to reach out to me.
Yeah, that's very good. I'm glad you're everywhere because this information has to be shared far and wide. And I would also recommend your book to family members of someone with breast cancer
Yeah,
because this
it
is
really started off as a place for women with a breast cancer diagnosis to get the answers that they needed in order to make an informed decision, and then turned into a book about breast cancer prevention because it's the same things. If you have a diagnosis, you want to prevent a recurrence, and if you don't have a diagnosis, you want to prevent getting one. So the book really became about prevention, and I agree with you. I think that everyone benefits from getting this book, and it's a I intentionally made it a really easy read because I want people to feel empowered to take their health into their own hands, into
yeah,
their own control. We have so much more power than we think, so much more power than we've been led to believe.
yes.
And at the end of the day, the only person that can make you healthy is you.
That's right. That's right. And it is our right to, have a healthy body. It is,
Yes.
like I say, this cathedral of our spirit needs constant renovation and repairs. And there's no way
Amen.
to get around that. That's for
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
So I thank you so much for being on. One last question before we go. And we really want to ask the expert here. When, one thing that I studied way back, because I learned a lot about bioidentical progesterone from Dr. John Lee, and I spoke for his institute a few times. And the thing that I learned that really was so powerful, especially coming out of Emory University as an OBGYN. I mean, birth control pills were like one of our standard practice,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Was that of course, the progestins, and especially giving to girls younger than age 16 when the breast tissue is still developing, increases the risk of breast cancer. And, like in general, what do you say about birth control pills, especially in our young teens?
Oh, I mean, there's no greater study than that 1.8 million women study in Denmark, which showed that there is a linear relationship between the number of years that you are on hormonal birth control that contains progestins and the likelihood that you're going to develop breast cancer. And it is true in 20-year-olds, in 30-year-olds, in 40-year-olds. Like, no one escaped this wrath, and it's the progestins. I mean, we know from every single study, it's the progestins. In fact, there is a breast cancer study where women post breast cancer were given hormone replacement, and they were giving elevated levels of progestins, and the increase in recurrence rate was like 28% or something like that. It is absolutely positively the progestins, whereas the hormone replacement studies in in women with breast cancer, which had either very small levels or no progestins but bioidentical progesterone, have no increased risk of recurrence. And in fact, most of those studies showed better outcomes for those women. Again, this is data that I'm going to be presenting at the A4M meeting in December. But birth control pills, progestin containing anything, is just simply toxic, and it is going to increase your risk of breast cancer. And it's just a linear model. The longer you're on, the higher your risk. And that risk remains for about 5 years. So if you get through 5 years of not taking it and don't develop breast cancer, your risk does drop to the normal population, but it is increased while you're taking it and after.
Yeah. And so there's always one next right step, y'all. There's always one next right step we could take to advocate for our health. And ultimately, we are in charge. I
Yeah.
really want to thank you.
I'm curious, what do you recommend to women for birth control? Because I can't recommend any hormonal birth control.
The copper T IUD, used it. My kids have used it. I mean, copper T
Do you
IUD whenever
do you have
possible.
any concerns about that and increased copper levels or anything like that?
No, I look at red blood cell, zinc, and copper in clients with, again, if you're young and healthy, very low risk, unless you have a history of Wilson's disease or family history.
Yeah.
But that is a concern in Wilson's disease. But otherwise, look at zinc, red blood cell zinc levels, look at zinc and copper ratios. Is something you can test on, every couple
Yeah.
years. You can get a baseline and see, and then reevaluate. But again, like with anything else, decrease inflammation in low inflammatory states. I don't think there's anything to worry about. And especially still with the Paragard IUD or copper T IUD as it's called, the you got to use condoms. Like new sexual partner, use condoms, decrease your exposure to any types of infections, etc.
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah.
But I think it's safe and it's completely reversible. And, pay attention. I always counsel my clients, any first signs of infection or anything else, we want to evaluate you. You want to get evaluated. But otherwise, I found it to be great, safe. In the nulliparous, women who have never, had pregnancy. If we're worried about pregnancy, let's use it to prevent pregnancy. The birth control pill, if that's something that has to be for a short, like this is where I would say, we used to say hormone replacement for the shortest duration of time. Like forget it. Why would we stop? But for birth control pills, like for the time necessary, never to use it for non-birth control reasons because of the risks.
Yeah.
So we address the reason that we need to use, that we're trying to use the birth control pills. And then, of course, there's a whole discussion on that. We need to use nutrients and replace the nutrients that are being robbed from the birth control pills, and probably still need bioidentical progesterone and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for allowing me to ask a question.
Oh, anytime. I love having this conversation with you. And I thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with all our audience. You guys, as this conversation closes, remember that you are not powerless when it comes to breast health. Knowledge, tools, and support are evolving, and you deserve access to all of Dr. Jenn's work at Real Health MD and Perfection Imaging, right? It's opening its doors to safer and more accurate breast screening, along with integrative root cause strategies that support true healing, and her book, you guys, The Smart Woman's Guide to Breast Cancer. So get this book, follow up with Dr. Jenn, and at realhealthmd.com. Follow up with her and definitely follow her on social media. So if this episode spoke to you, please share it with a girlfriend, your daughters, your mom. Every woman in your circle deserves this conversation. You can continue learning from Dr. Jenn at Real Health MD, on Instagram at Dr. Jenn Simmons, on her YouTube channel at Dr. Jenn Simmons. Definitely subscribe to the Girlfriend Doctor so you never miss these life-changing, heart-opening talks. Remember, you are seen, you are loved, and you were made for more. I love being your Girlfriend Doctor. Till next time.
Thanks for watching another episode of the Girlfriend Doctor podcast. Check out all the links below for more.